Hi, Gary Mitchell here. If you noticed, I've updated my tagline to reflect what I've been doing for the last few years, which is bringing IT and OT together. More and more, I'm contacting IT people as well as OT, and many of the manufacturing software people in my typical automation bailiwick who really bridge that gap. And it's two ways. One is software that I just mentioned. A lot of HMI SCADAs written with IT in mind, and MES. When I get news about MES, I have that. But also, there's a ton of edge devices coming from the IT people, from the OT people, and I think the edge device, which is basically hardware, is that device that bridges the gap between the two. And so I've been talking about that quite a bit lately over the last year or two. So I changed some of the artwork that I've done. You may have noticed. This is a report basically from the ARC Advisory Group Industry Forum last week um, in February in Orlando. It's the 22nd annual ARC Forum, and it's my 21st. And boy, have I seen changes over that time. 21 years ago, when I was there, or 20 times ago, um, the discussion was whether or not the software people were going to use Windows or Java. And the Sun people were there, and they were thoroughly convinced that Java was actually an operating system and not a programming language. And they really obfuscated a lot of stuff as far as all that goes, because Java's it just every time I open up the book, I start to learn Java again. I go, oh yeah, this is a really good programming language. Why did they think it was an operating system? But at any rate, my second one of these forums, which would have been the third for the third one for ARC. There was just speaker after speaker after speaker got up and said, "We're going to put a software on Windows. We're going to put our software on Windows." The Sun guys were sitting in front of me. They got up and left about halfway through the thing, and they probably saw that the world was going Windows at that time. So there are people who still use Java for a lot of things, but not as an operating system, at least not in our area. So a lot of changes over all that time. Among the changes have been that it was a Tuesday, Wednesday forum with a few things happening on Thursday. And way back in that time, ARC was promoting a group called OMAC, Open Modular Architecture Controller, which has morphed a few times and now has a home with the Packaging Machinery Manufacturers Institute, PMMI, which bought my old magazine, Automation World, which is now part of the PMMI suite of products. But that was an attempt to support something that would bring end users to the conference. And now this is the third one of these forums that has brought the Open Process Automation Forum. Some similarities to OMAC. The cynical, I don't know if it's cynical or realistic view, is that there are a few end users who are trying to drive down the price of a DCS. On the other hand, there are, as always, people like me, true believers in technology and standards, who say, here's an opportunity to drive innovation using standards in the industry. I spent Thursday morning in the forum, and I spent some other time with another session that OPAF had, and didn't get an awful lot of new data. They're still trucking along and still trying to find their way, settling in on a number of things. It looks very interesting, but I don't have, unfortunately, a whole lot to report right now. But that's okay, because the other new thing with the forum has to do with Mondays. And a few years ago, they started inviting the press to come in on Monday for a round of press conferences from sponsors of the forum and supporters of ARC. And this year is probably too many. I'm looking at my notes, too many to count this quickly. There were a ton. They were held to 20 minutes this year, and they started at 12 and ended at 5:30. Do the math. There were a lot of them. let me dive in. Some of the themes are collaboration and working together. So the OPC Foundation, for quite some time now, OPC UA, the spec has been released, products are being built. I've seen interoperability boards, the last couple of Hanover fairs, and some other places. So there's a lot going on with the actual OPC UA. The big news within the UA Foundation, a part of the foundation, was the release of Publish Subscribe, or PubSub, and that's about to be, the final release is imminent, and that's cool. But what they've really been doing to outreach is lately a lot of what's called companion specs, and they announced at their press conference and some other announcements this year too. The press conference was with the FieldComm group, and that's the combination, if you recall, of the Heart Foundation and the Fieldbus Foundation. They had similar technologies and similar ways to go to market, and a lot of the same members. And so that's when the members get together and say, wait a minute, I'm spending money here, why don't we combine? It'll save me a little bit of money because the technologies are complementary. And so that's what they've done, and that's the FieldComm group. And there has been some cross-pollination of OPC and FieldComm technologies. And at this point in time, they announced a joint working group to do a companion specification for Heart and Fieldbus and OPC UA. That will be very cool. Also announced was a companion spec release with the Ethernet PowerLink group, and so there's a companion spec there. And further, ARC Advisory Group released a report showing adoption of OPC UA, and I got a chance to do some proofreading and input in that paper several months ago. And basically, OPC and ARC went through a lot of records and so on, and called out numbers that show that the adoption of UA is proceeding rapidly. So collaboration. So Ignition, Inductive Automation and their product Ignition, a supporter of this podcast and my website. Thank you very much, Inductive people. They have been working with partners and building an ecosystem for some time. Very interesting. They've gone to market through systems integrators, and then now they're partnering. And among the partners are Bedrock Automation with a really solid, high-end, built from the ground up, cyber secure controller, and also Opto22, which is actually on the kind of the other end of the spectrum, who specializes in less expensive controllers and communication devices, and looking for more of a quicker, lightweight sort of thing, not lightweight in a pejorative sense, in a technical sense. And anyway, so Ignition or Inductive Automation announced Ignition, essentially embedded, that could be in an edge device, for example, and both Bedrock Automation and Opto22 were at the forum, and I had a chance to talk to both. So first I talked to Benson Hoagland and Bob Sheffers and Mark Engman. Mark is the CEO of Opto22, about their new product, and it's Epic. And it's a combination edge device, so it's like a PC with a lot of memory and networking capability, and a controller, a nice little PLC-looking kind of controller with I/O slots and so on. And it could program in an IEC 61131 method, or using Opto's flowchart style PC programming software. Either one works. You can embed stuff, and so Inductive Automation's Ignition could come embedded in that. Perhaps the best thing I saw at the show as far as hardware, but a close one right in that whole mix is Bedrock, and what they did was a nice small, relatively small gateway device, if you will, or a small embedded PC with all the good stuff that Bedrock builds in, all the cybersecurity and a hardening and all of that at a very reasonable price, according to Albert Rickers, the founder, CTO, CEO of Bedrock. I can't quote dollars, don't have it, but anyway, I was impressed with the size and the technology and so on. So you have two big choices with embedded ignition for HMI SCADA and control on the edge. So that was the thing. So partnership plus control at the edge, a couple of big things going on there. Let's see, how many other things did I find out? Partnership between Emerson Automation and AspenTech was interesting. AspenTech, a few years ago, had some severe financial difficulties. They've come out of it quite well. They're making partnerships like crazy, and a really interesting partnership with Emerson Automation, which should benefit customers on both ends of that spectrum. Yokogawa has expanded and improved their product line, and that was in the one of the press conferences. I'll be writing more about that on my blog. Not a product announcement, but Greg Bentley from Bentley Systems spoke. And the interesting thing there, not my area, it's design engineering software, CAD and CAD on steroids and so on. But what's really interesting there is the enhancements they have done in morphing together different technologies. So, for example, the ability to take digital photography, digital pictures, which we look at on our iPhones as just a picture, but it's actually a whole lot of data, right? And math and so on. They can import that into their CAD system, their design system, and put out some really powerful graphics and design enhancement applications. Really cool. I mean, they're quite the visionary company, and there's some really good stuff. And I wish I was more of an expert in that area than I am not. Honeywell continues to expand its connected plant ideas. I've seen vestige of this from a long time ago. Things like personnel tracking to know if there's an incident, where people are and where to get them out and so on, and a whole lot of things that go along with that. And Honeywell continues to enhance their connected plant system. Schneider Electric was talking a lot about digitalization, and they're still proceeding along that. There are two groups are there. There was the software side, Reed, Wonderware, or somebody like that. That's one side of it, and the other side of it is the old Foxborough side. And the Foxborough Triconics side had a press conference to talk about a cybersecurity incident that was essentially, it put Triconics in the news, their safety system, but in actual fact, the Triconic system caught the intrusion and caused and precipitated an intelligent shutdown without in a safe manner, so that it actually worked. Unfortunately, Triconics got into the news on that, and so they wanted to just talk about some of the systems that it actually was fine, but it's something we all need to watch. The security people were all over the place. There were so many security booths and exhibits, and I talked to several while I was there. And so this was just one instance of different kinds of security that I saw. Where else do I have on here? I've got a ton of things. I hit those and those and those. Siemens was there talking about their newest release of MindSphere. MindSphere is when they first introduced that to me a few years ago. It was kind of like a pretty cool piece of software and a pretty cool piece of software. And as time goes on, it's one of those that other people are beginning to talk about. It's a platform that people can connect to, and maybe even eventually have a platform store where people can put an app in it and then sell an app on top of MindSphere and Siemens and so on. It's an interesting idea. Other people have the same idea. Nothing is really taking hold right now in any kind of a critical mass way. But playing with these ideas is always good, despite the critics. I mean, you talk in a hallway, okay, that doesn't matter. The idea is we play with ideas, see how they work, and see what catches on, and then it morphs from there. So we'll see what happens on that. Siemens is very aggressive. It used to be you almost never heard from them. And now I've got so many different things to go to with Siemens. They've got conferences here, forums there, innovation days, and so on. And it's kind of, well, I'm just me, so I can't hit everything. It's getting to be too hard for me to just get around and find everything that's going on. So, but Siemens was there in force, and we talked to them. Um, so I think that that's pretty much what I saw. The end users, the forum had, they were saying 920 attendees, which is way more than usual. Um, Talking to one of the ARC people, he thought that one contributing reason was that the end user companies finally freed up some money for their people to travel. I know that for many years, some of the major companies that had engineers behind a lot of really good initiatives, just there was no money. Any travel was shut off. Period. I mean, some of the people that are down the road from where I live, like 70 miles, they didn't have the money to drive up to Sydney, Ohio to see me. I mean, it was that tight for so many companies, and a lot of money was freed up. So there were a lot of end users there, which is really good. A lot of innovation comes because of or through end users, and there's a lot more vibe there when you get more people who actually use and apply the technology there. So that was all a good thing. A lot of fantastic hallway conversations, and met a lot of people. It was a good experience. On the one hand, for some of us, it's kind of a shame that it's a private event, meaning it's just ARC advisory group. And not one of those major trade shows like we used to have. But on the other hand, almost everybody was there. You could see a lot of people have a lot of interviews. I had like nothing but interviews. I was just swamped meeting people. All good. It was all good. So at any rate, I just wrapping up the ARC forum, and we're talking about enhancements in software platforms. Internet of Things was around, maybe not as obviously spoken, but it was an underlying theme. Computing on the edge was definitely a big theme, and software standards and collaboration definitely a big thing. And we'll see where this open process automation forum, where the whole initiative goes. That's probably the coolest thing to watch coming out, and even if it doesn't take off as they vision it, I think it will influence an awful lot of product development, and we'll see those developments coming down the road. So at any rate, it's Gary Mitchell. This is connecting IT and OT at the Manufacturing Connection, and thanks to Inductive Automation for helping sponsor not only this podcast, but my website. Thanks, and have a good day. See you at some future conference.